Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. My name is Daniel Mercer, and when the outbreak started, I was standing in front of a stainless steel biosafety cabinet, watching a mouse stop moving. It was a Tuesday morning in Galveston, Texas. Outside, the air was already humid, even though it was just after 8:30 a.m. The Gulf wind pushed clouds over the island and rattled the flag in front of the University of Texas Medical Branch campus. Inside the Galveston National Laboratory, you could not hear any of that. The building was sealed behind layers of concrete, steel, negative pressure, and security doors. From where I stood on the third floor, all I heard was the steady rush of filtered air and the faint whir of centrifuges in the next room. We were a high containment facility, BSL-3 on the lower levels, BSL-4 upstairs, where people worked in full-body positive pressure suits. The kind of place people imagined when they thought about exotic viruses, government projects, and things that were never supposed to reach the outside world. Most days, it was less dramatic than it sounded. There were more spreadsheets than action scenes, more air filters and safety drills than mysterious injections. But that morning, something was off. I was a virologist and biosafety officer. My job was to manage research on high-risk pathogens and make sure nobody cut corners. I carried a badge that opened more doors than most people in the building. I reviewed incident reports, trained new staff, and signed off on protocols. It did not make me important in the outside world, but inside those walls, it meant that when alarms went off, someone was going to call my name. At 8:32 a.m., my lab tech, Marisol, stepped close to the glass window in the door and tapped twice to get my attention. She wore a yellow Tyvek gown over her scrubs, a surgical mask, eye protection, and nitrile gloves. We were inside a BSL-3 suite, so that was standard gear. I stepped back from the biosafety cabinet, put down my pipette, and pulled my own mask down, just enough to speak clearly. "You see this?" I asked, nodding toward the mouse cage in the cabinet. "Maybe," she replied. "We have something weird with the ferrets. The mice were part of a control group. They were supposed to be fine. We were studying a modified lyssavirus strain, basically something in the rabies family. It was engineered to be replication deficient, used for tracing neural pathways. It was not supposed to cause disease under our protocol. One of the mice lay on its side at the edge of the cage. Its chest moved too fast. Its front legs twitched intermittently, like it was trying to get up and could not coordinate the motion. It panted with its mouth slightly open, teeth exposed." "How many?" I asked. "One so far," Marisol said. "But the ferrets are worse, and the timing does not match the schedule." I checked the label on the cage. The ID tag showed the study number, date of inoculation, and the split between control and test groups. The mouse in front of me should not have been exposed to the active viral vector. I recorded the cage number on my clipboard, then pulled the mask back over my nose and mouth. "All right," I said, "let's lock this down for now. Nobody touches this group until we confirm the records. Double-check the animal log and then call veterinary. I'll go look at the ferrets." She nodded. "Already tried. They're on their way, but you should see this yourself." We moved out of the BSL-3 room through the first anteroom, dropping used gloves into a biohazard bin, pressing the stainless steel door plate with our elbows. The door shut behind us with a solid latch. A second later, the negative pressure system hissed faintly as it adjusted. Every door opening shifted airflow. The building constantly compensated. We passed through the second anteroom, then into the main corridor. Fluorescent lights gave the hall a flat, timeless look. White walls, grey floors, yellow stripes marking the boundary of restricted areas. Security cameras hung in protective domes every few yards. At the far end of the corridor, a badge-controlled door separated the BSL-3 suite from the rest of the building. "Any system alarms?" I asked as we walked. She shook her head. Nothing on the panel. No pressure loss. No power dips. But the ferrets are not behaving right. Did anyone change the schedule? I pressed. New vector, new dose, any unlogged test? She knew what I was getting at. In our world, the most dangerous thing in a lab was not the virus. It was the person who decided to treat the safety rules as suggestions. No, she said. I checked the last entries. Same protocol as last week. We badged out through the corridor door. The reader flashed green. A camera above the door tracked us as we stepped into the central hub of the floor, where a long, glass-walled control room overlooked multiple labs. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and coffee. In the control room, Dr. Halpern, our veterinary pathologist, leaned over a monitor. He was in his 50s, with thinning grey hair and rectangular glasses that always slid down his nose. His lab coat was halfway buttoned, and his ID badge dangled from a retractable clip. "You see this?" he asked as we walked in. "What's going on?" I replied, stepping up beside him. He rewound a video feed from Lab 3. The camera was pointed at a row of stainless steel cages stacked on a rack against the far wall. Inside, the ferrets paced restlessly. Normally, they were active but predictable. Now their movements looked erratic. One of them repeatedly pushed its head against the bars near the door latch, then pulled back and paced. "Wait," Marisol said. "That latch." We watched as the ferret pushed again and again, focusing on the same spot with unusual persistence. It was not random scratching, it was targeted pressure on the latch. "That is not normal," Halpern said. "They are more restless, more aggressive with the environment. They started about an hour ago." "What did we give them?" I asked, my mind cataloguing possibilities. He clicked through the animal tracking software. Each animal had an ID number, associated with a chip under the skin and a detailed record. "Same vector series as last week," he said. "Study 814. Modified lyssavirus with altered glycoprotein for increased receptor binding in limbic system. Non-propagating backbone. Same dose. The only change was sample source for the glycoprotein." My stomach tightened. "Sample source from where?" He hesitated. "From the new project upstairs, the zoonotic reservoir panel, the one from the bat surveillance program." "That was cleared?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "Paperwork is in order. I checked the approvals myself. The vector design passed the safety review. We confirmed it could not replicate. That is still true." "Then why are the animals changing behavior like this?" I asked. He did not answer. The video feed showed one ferret suddenly lunge at another. Teeth bared, they collided against the divider. The attacked ferret jumped back, then started pacing faster. "This is more than mild behavioral change," Halpern said quietly. "This is pronounced aggression and fixation, and it is early. Too early for the original kinetics." Before I could respond, the lab intercom crackled overhead. "Dr. Mercer, to security," a calm male voice said. "Dr. Mercer, please report to the first floor security office immediately." That was not standard phrasing for a random badge issue. I exchanged a glance with Marisol. She frowned and crossed her arms. "You go," she said. "I'll stay with Halpern and get more data." "Lock down that lab," I said. "Physical locks, not just software. And no non-essential staff inside until I sign off." "Understood," she answered. I left the control room, swiped through another badge door, and headed to the stairwell. The metal steps ran quietly under my shoes as I went down. On the second floor, I passed one of the BSL-4 corridors. The door had a triple lock system, including a numeric keypad and a palm vein scanner. A camera above the door followed me as I moved. I had clearance, but I was not headed that way. The security office was on the ground floor near the main entrance. Before you reached the outer doors, you had to pass through metal detectors, a turnstile, and a pair of surveillance cameras that fed a small control room. Inside that room sat a bank of monitors, a rack of radio chargers, and a gun locker that held a small collection of pistols and rifles that we hoped never to use. When I pushed the security office door open, the air inside felt different, heavier. The head of security, James Randall, looked up from behind the desk. He was a former Houston Police Department officer, mid-40s, solid build, short hair, with the kind of calm expression that did not change much even under stress. Today, though, there was a tightness around his eyes. On one of the monitors behind him, I saw the external camera feed. An ambulance was parked at the curb outside the building. 2 paramedics stood by the back doors. They both wore N95 respirators, and their body language was tense. "What's going on?" I asked. Randall turned the monitor toward me a bit. "We received a call from UTMB Emergency Department," he said. "They are sending over a patient who claims he was exposed to something from our lab. He insisted he had to come back here, not to the main hospital building." "That makes no sense," I said. "We do not take patients here. There are no clinical units inside this building." "I told them that," Randall replied. "But the neurology attending over there said the man refused to stay. He got agitated, tried to leave, and they contacted campus police. Instead of putting him in restraints, they tried to de-escalate. He said he worked with you." I felt a slow chill under my skin. "Name?" Randall clicked through a digital log. "Dr. Ellis. First name Martin. Does that sound familiar?" It was like someone had hit a switch in my brain. My memories lined up in a row. Dr. Martin Ellis, mid-30s, infectious disease fellow, seconded to our lab for a joint project. He'd been working on the zoonotic reservoir samples upstairs, focusing on serology and neutralization assays. He had left yesterday afternoon, looking tired, but that was not unusual. "When did he leave the lab?" I asked. "The last time we saw him." Randall checked another screen. My heart rate rose as I waited. He pulled up the badge access log for Lab 4A, our main BSL-4 suite. "Yesterday at 4:21 p.m, he said. He badged out of the inner airlock, then left through the main exit at 5:03 p.m. No re-entry since then." "Any incident reports?" I asked. "Anything abnormal during his shift?" "No," Randall said. "Not from him. But the nurse at the emergency department said he came in just before 7 a.m. today, confused, with a fever, and complaining of a headache and sensitivity to light. While they were evaluating him, he became agitated and insisted he had to go back to the lab. He kept saying something about we missed it, and they are not just markers." I swallowed. "And now?" "They managed to convince him to ride over here in the ambulance, under the condition that he could speak to you or another lab supervisor," Randall said. "They did not fully secure him because he was still cooperative, but he has become less so during the ride. The paramedics called ahead. They are uncomfortable." On the screen, I saw one of the paramedics climb out of the ambulance and look toward the building. He spoke into his radio, then turned back to the doors. The second paramedic slid one door open and leaned in. "Where do you have them?" I asked. "In the bay," Randall said. "Not inside the building. I wanted your input before bringing anyone past the first barrier." That, at least, gave me a small amount of relief. "Good. Keep it that way." I took a breath and thought through the situation as I would any other potential exposure. Unknown syndrome in a lab worker who had recently handled high-risk material, neurological symptoms, fever, agitation, possible lab-acquired infection. With our work, that could mean anything from ordinary flu to something that would trigger national alerts. "All right," I said, "here is what we do. We treat this as a potential high-consequence exposure until proven otherwise. Nobody brings him into the main building. We use the decon bay by the loading dock. I want full PPE for anyone approaching him, and 95 or better. Face shields, disposable gowns, gloves. If he is agitated, we coordinate with campus police and UTMB security for safe restraint, but we do not escalate unless he becomes a danger." Randall nodded. "We already notified campus police. They are en route. Medical is on standby, but we need you to talk to him. He keeps asking for you by name." I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was just after 8:40 a.m. "Fine," I said, "but we do this by the book." I pulled a disposable yellow gown from the rack, stepped into it, and tied it behind my back. Randall handed me an N95 respirator and a face shield. I fitted the respirator, adjusted the nose clip, then placed the shield over my eyes. I pulled on a pair of nitrile gloves over my hands and flexed my fingers. "Radio check," Randall said, handing me a handheld unit. "Channel 2 is internal. Campus police will be on 3, medical on 4. I clipped the radio to my belt. It felt heavier than it really was. "Let's go," I said. We exited the security office into the main lobby. The outer doors were closed, with their glass panes looking out onto the driveway. The ambulance sat near the curb, engine idling. The Gulf air outside made a faint haze above the asphalt. Randall opened a side door that led to the service corridor, then through to the loading dock. The decontamination bay was adjacent to the dock, separated by a thick, sealed door. The bay was designed for equipment, not people, but in emergencies, it could serve as an isolation area. It had its own negative pressure system and dedicated HEPA filters. If we had to, we could vent it separately from the rest of the building. As we stepped into the bay, the fans kicked up slightly. A stainless steel drain in the center of the floor glinted under the overhead lights. There were racks on the wall with spray nozzles for disinfectant and a control panel to the side. We opened the outer bay door. The ambulance driver looked surprised to see us appear from the side instead of the main lobby. "Dr. Mercer," one of the paramedics called, stepping around the back of the ambulance. He wore blue scrubs, a reflective vest, an N95 respirator, and blue gloves. Sweat darkened the material around his collar. "I'm Mercer," I said, voice muffled behind my mask and shield. "You called from the emergency department?" He nodded. "Yeah, name's David. We brought him over from the ED. He is not cooperative. He wants you." We did not want to escalate physically because he is a staff member, and we were hoping you could calm him down. "Is he restrained?" I asked, stepping closer but keeping a couple of yards of distance. "Soft restraints at the wrists and ankles," David said. "But he is strong. We had to keep him sedated in the ED to get an IV in, but he fought that too." "Vitals?" I asked. "Fever at 103 degrees Fahrenheit," he said. "Heart rate in the 140s. Blood pressure slightly elevated. Respiratory rate 28. He is sweating heavily, complaining of intense headache and sensitivity to noise and light. He also has moments where he seems confused and repeats phrases. It is not just anxiety. Any rash, signs of trauma, needle sticks?" I asked. "Nothing obvious," David said. "No injection marks besides what we did in the ED, but he has scratch marks on his forearms. He said he scraped them in the suit." Whatever that means. My chest tightened again. Did hospital infection control evaluate him? "They wanted to," he said, "but he refused to stay. They did preliminary labs. White count was high. They started broad-spectrum antibiotics and antivirals, but did not manage full workup before he insisted on leaving. The attending decided the fastest way to keep him cooperative and safe was to bring him here, since he kept saying he had to see you in the lab. That attending was going to have a rough conversation with public health later, I thought, but that was not my immediate problem. "Open the door," I said, slowly. "We're going to move him into the bay. I will talk to him from 6 to 8 feet away. Nobody removes their mask. Understood?" David nodded. The second paramedic, a woman with her hair tied up under a cap, moved to the back doors. She glanced at me through her respirator, then opened one door halfway. I stepped to the side to maintain my distance. Inside the ambulance, under the fluorescent lights, Dr. Martin Ellis lay on the stretcher. He looked like a different person from the one I had seen yesterday. His skin was flushed, glistening with sweat. His brown hair stuck to his forehead. His eyes were wide, scanning the space with restless movements that did not quite focus. His wrists were secured with padded straps to the rails of the stretcher. His ankles were strapped as well. An IV line ran from his left arm to a hanging bag of clear fluid. The line had a clamp engaged, showing they had stopped the flow. "Martin," I said, raising my voice slightly to be heard through the mask and shield. "It is Daniel. You are at the lab. We are going to bring you into a special room to evaluate you. Nobody is going to hurt you, but you need to stay calm and follow instructions." His eyes snapped toward me. For a moment, there was recognition. Then his expression twisted with something between anger and desperation. "Daniel," he said, his voice hoarse, "you have to shut it down. You have to stop it. It is not what we thought." "What is not what we thought?" I asked, keeping my tone calm. "Tell me what happened." He tugged at the restraints. The stretcher creaked. "The markers," he said. "The reservoir panel. It is not just exposure markers. It changes behavior. It drives them toward others. I felt." He cut off with a sharp breath and pressed the back of his head into the stretcher. His muscles tensed. For a few seconds, his whole body strained against the restraints. "Okay," I said. "We're going to take you into that room." I pointed to the decon bay behind me. "We need to evaluate you and keep you from infecting anyone else if this is contagious." He laughed once. It was a short, humorless sound. "Too late," he said. "You do not see it yet." The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. "Move him," I said to the paramedics. "Keep his mask on. Do not remove it for any reason." They nodded. Together with Randall, they rolled the stretcher out of the ambulance. Ellis struggled, stronger than I expected for someone with that fever. The restraints held, but the stretcher's wheels squeaked as they turned. We guided him into the decon bay. I closed the outer door behind us. A green light on the control panel confirmed that negative pressure was active. We were now in a sealed room, separated from both the outside and the rest of the building. "All right," I said. "Stop there." They parked the stretcher in the center of the bay. Ellis twisted his head to follow me as I stepped around to keep my distance. "Martin, listen to me," I said. "You worked upstairs yesterday. BSL-4, zoonotic panel. Did you have any breach in your suit? Tear? Leak? Failed glove?" He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again. "I thought it was just a scrape," he said. "At first, one of the cages, the bat, I brushed against it, and the edge caught my glove. Tiny tear near the wrist. I did not even see it until after. I disinfected. I logged it. I thought it was nothing." "You logged it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "In the incident report system?" He nodded weakly. "Yes, but I think they archived it. We have too many minor entries." I was tired. I did not push it. I felt a rush of anger at that. Not at him exactly, but at the system that trained us to treat near misses as routine. But this was not the time. "What happened next?" I asked. "Headache," he said. "Last night I went home, thought it was just stress. Woke up drenched in sweat. Everything felt too bright, too loud. I could hear my neighbors moving in the hallway, and it sounded like they were stomping. I tried to drive to the hospital. I almost ran a red light. At the ED, the lights were like knives. Everyone was too close. I wanted to get away, but I knew I had to come here. Because if it is in me, it is in them, in the animals." He shifted, pulling at the restraints again. One of the paramedics stepped closer to adjust an IV line, then thought better of it. "What do you mean? It changes behavior?" I asked. "Describe what you feel." His gaze locked on mine. There was terror in his eyes, but something else too. A kind of intensity I did not usually see in him. "It makes you focus on people," he said slowly. "On movement. It makes you want to be near them, to close the distance. You stop caring about your own safety. You just want to get close. And when they try to push you away, it makes you angry." He swallowed. "I'm trying to warn you, right now. But there is also a part of me that wants to break these straps and get close to you. I can feel both at the same time. Do you understand?" I did. Or at least I understood enough. "How long after the tear did your symptoms start?" I asked. "About 12 hours, he said. "Maybe less. It is fast." That was wrong. Our original design had an incubation period measured in days, not hours. We had built it that way specifically to allow time for detection and intervention. "Okay," I said. "We are going to keep you here. We will contact infectious disease, CDC, and the state health department. We will lock down the lab. You did the right thing by coming back." He laughed again. softer this time. "You think the locks will hold," he said. "You do not understand how people behave when it gets in them." "David," I said to the paramedic, "step back. Keep yourself between him and the exit, not the wall. If he breaks free, you want him moving away from the building, not deeper inside." David nodded and adjusted his position. "Randall," I continued, "you and I need to step outside and start the emergency chain. Leave the paramedics here for the moment, but nobody opens this bay door without my authorization." Ellis jerked his arms again. The restraints creaked. "You're too slow," he said. "You always were. We all are. We think we can model this, but we only model what we already understand." I looked at him for a second longer, then turned toward the door. The control panel beeped as I keyed the internal release. The inner seal opened, and we stepped into the small airlock between the bay and the main building. As the door closed behind us, I heard the stretcher creak again, and Ellis's voice rise, muffled by the layers of glass and steel. We moved through the second door into the service corridor. Randall pulled off his face shield and rubbed his forehead. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think," I said, "we may have our first confirmed lab-acquired infection with a modified zoonotic agent that is behaving in a way it was not designed to behave, and I think we need to assume it may not stop with him." "Does that mean we lock down the whole building?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Full internal lockdown. No one in or out until public health says otherwise. We move to incident level 3 immediately." "That is going to cause a lot of noise," he said. "We are a high containment facility," I replied. "Noise is better than the alternative." He nodded and raised his radio. "This is Randall," he said. "Initiate internal lockdown protocol, level 3. All staff are to remain in place. Security to man all primary exits and restrict movement between floors. Repeat, lockdown level 3. As his message went out, a siren sounded softly inside the building. It was not a blaring alarm. It was a rising and falling tone, low and persistent, that everyone inside recognized from drills. Red lights above the doors began to flash. I headed back toward the security office with Randall. On the way, I pulled out my phone and opened the incident reporting system. If Ellis had logged a glove tear, it would be there. The system loaded slowly over the internal network. I navigated to near-miss reports, filtered by date and by researcher. There it was. Minor tear in outer glove while handling cage in Lab 4A. No visible contamination. Inner glove intact. Area disinfected. Suit integrity maintained. No further action required. Timestamp, yesterday, 2:17 p.m. Inner glove intact. That suggested no direct skin exposure. But if the tear had been bigger than he realized, or if there had been unnoticed contamination during doffing, the potential route was there. "What are you thinking?" Randall asked, watching my expression. "I'm thinking that the ferrets in 312 started acting strange about an hour ago," I said. "I'm thinking one of our mice in the control group is showing neurological signs it should not have. And I'm thinking we may be dealing with a virus that has found a way to bypass one of the safety features we relied on." We reached the security office. The phone on the desk was already ringing. Randall picked it up and put it on speaker. "Security, Randall," he said. "This is Dr. Singh from the emergency department," a brisk female voice said. "What is the status of Dr. Ellis? We are seeing something concerning here." "Dr. Ellis is in our decontamination bay," I said, stepping closer. "Isolated and under observation. What are you seeing?" "We had a nurse go off shift after contact with him this morning," she said. "About 2 hours after she left, her roommate called us. The nurse came home, complained of headache and sensitivity to light, then started acting strangely. The roommate described sudden agitation, pacing, and repeating phrases about needing to go back and fix it. Then the nurse attempted to leave the apartment in a disoriented state. Campus police are there now. They requested our input. We think this might be linked to whatever is affecting Dr. Ellis." I closed my eyes briefly. 2 hours. That was even shorter. "Were they wearing full PPE during contact?" I asked. "A 95 and face shield, Plus gloves, Dr. Singh said. Standard airborne and contact precautions. We did not think we needed more at the time. We did not know he might have been exposed to something from your facility. That last sentence carried an edge, but I understood. From their perspective, we were the source. We did not know either until he said it in the ambulance, I said. Dr. Singh, you need to treat this as a potential high-consequence pathogen with neurological involvement and behavioral changes. Full airborne and contact precautions for anyone who had close contact with him or this nurse. You need to restrict movement of anyone symptomatic. That is easy to say, she replied. We are already stretched. We can isolate a few, but if this is spreading fast, we are locking down the lab, I said. You should consider at least a partial lockdown of the emergency department and adjacent units. And you need to contact the State Health Department and CDC Emergency Operations Center. Do it now. There was a brief pause as she processed that. All right, she said finally. We will start our protocols, but I want a full report from your side as soon as possible. If this is something that started there, we are going to need every piece of information you have. You will have it, I said. I'm initiating an internal incident command structure. You will be looped in. She hung up. The dial tone sounded louder than usual in the small room. We are in it now, Randall said quietly. Yes, I said, we are. Over the next hour, the building shifted from normal operations to emergency mode. Doors that usually stayed unlocked between certain hours slid into secure status, requiring badges and, in some cases, secondary authentication. Overhead, the gentle alarm tone repeated at regular intervals. I convened an incident command team in a conference room on the second floor. We kept the group small. Myself, the facility director Dr. Perez, the biosafety manager, the chief veterinarian, and Randall representing security. We kept the door closed and the ventilation running. Everyone wore at least an N95, even though we were still within normal distance. On the large wall monitor, we pulled up the floor plans of the building. Each lab, corridor, and equipment room was marked with its airflow status and access controls. The BSL-4 suites were shaded a darker color. The decon bay, where Ellis lay, was outlined in red. We need to define the problem clearly, Dr. Perez said, leaning forward. She was in her early 50s, with a calm, steady presence, and a habit of folding her hands on the table when she thought. What do we know for sure? We know we have at least one lab worker, Dr. Ellis, with an acute onset of neurological and behavioral symptoms following a glove tear in BSL-4 yesterday, I said. We know he worked with a series of bat-derived viral samples, part of the zoonotic reservoir panel that was modified and integrated into a non-replicating lysovirus backbone. We know this backbone was designed to be incapable of self-propagation beyond a single round of infection. We believed it could not spread between hosts, but we now have a nurse showing similar symptoms after contact with him, the biosafety manager Evelyn added. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, with a laptop open in front of her, and early reports from the ER suggest this has progressed quickly, in a matter of hours. That suggests either our original safety assessment was wrong, or something has changed in the virus. We also have abnormal behavior in our animal models, Halpern said over the speakerphone. He was still in the animal facility. The ferrets in study 814 are demonstrating increased aggression, environmental fixation, and attempts to escape their cages. At least one mouse in the control group is showing neurological signs that it should not. That suggests either cross-contamination or that the control designation was incorrect. So we potentially have a novel agent that causes rapid onset neurological and behavioral changes, Perez summarized. It appears to increase proximity-seeking behavior and aggression, and it may alter risk perception. It might also be more transmissible than intended. Routes of transmission could include bodily fluids, close contact, or aerosols, given the nature of the backbone and envelope proteins. Yes, I said, We do not know yet whether it is primarily transmitted via bites, droplets, or something else. But we know we cannot assume ordinary personal protective equipment is enough. We need to upgrade precautions wherever feasible. Security status? Perez asked, turning to Randall. The building is sealed, he said. All external doors are locked under my control. Staff already inside cannot leave without my override. We have posted officers at the main entrances. They are armed and equipped with N95 respirators, face shields, and gloves. We have instructed them to avoid physical confrontation unless absolutely necessary. We do not want to risk close contact with potentially infected individuals. Good, she said. We need to keep this contained here and in the hospital, if at all possible. Public health is already going to have a difficult time with this. I called the Texas Department of State Health Services, Evelyn said, glancing at her laptop. They are activating their Emergency Operations Center. CDC Emergency Ops is on another line. They are requesting an initial case report and any available sequence data on the viral construct. We have the design, I said, but we need fresh samples from the animals and, if possible, from Ellis and the nurse. That means sending people into higher risk environments. I will handle the animals, Halpern said over the phone. I'm already in the BSL-3 corridor. I can gear up and sedate a subset for sampling, but I need confirmation. Are we still allowed to move specimens to the BSL-4 lab for further analysis? That depends, Perez said. If the original construct is implicated, BSL-4 is appropriate, but we do not want to risk exposing more staff. I can work alone in a suit, Halpern said, but I will require an airlock operator. We cannot run BSL-4 without 2 people on the protocol. I will volunteer for that, I said. I'm already involved in the incident. It is better that we concentrate exposure risk in a smaller number of people who are fully briefed. Perez nodded reluctantly. All right. But we must keep a strict log of every person entering the suites from this moment forward. No exceptions. The meeting continued. We assigned roles, drafted messages to staff, and outlined the immediate steps. Secure the animals, secure the building, secure the data. In the background, the alarm tone continued to pulse at regular intervals. At 10:15 a.m., we received the first external call that made my stomach drop further. Evelyn's phone buzzed. She glanced at the caller ID, frowned, and picked up. Yes, she said. She listened for a moment, then her eyes widened. Slow down, she said. Repeat that. We all watched her. Whatever she was hearing, it was not routine. All right, she said finally. Understood. We are in lockdown. I will relay this to command. She hung up and looked around the table. That was campus police, she said. They were at the nurse's apartment. While they attempted to restrain her for transfer back to the hospital, she broke free and attacked one of the officers. She bit him on the forearm through his uniform sleeve. They managed to subdue her with help from another officer, but not before she caused a laceration. My hands tightened into fists. Is the officer okay? Perez asked. He is conscious, Evelyn said. They are transporting both to the hospital now, but there is more. Other residents in the building came out when they heard the commotion. One tried to pull the nurse away. She scratched him in the process. He is now complaining of dizziness and nausea. That was less than 30 minutes ago. The room fell silent for a moment. Then our assumption stands, I said. This agent is transmitted via bites or close contact with bodily fluids, and the behavioral component is driving aggressive, proximity-seeking behavior that is likely to accelerate transmission in close quarters. Perez exhaled slowly. We are very close to the city center, she said. If this spreads into the general population before we understand it, we may be dealing with something that outpaces our ability to respond. We cannot control the hospital, Randall said, but we can control this building. We need to assume someone inside may already be incubating it, especially if the agent has breached containment or if there was any improper handling of waste. That means, I said, we need to treat internal movement like a risk. No unnecessary travel between floors, no gatherings. everyone stays in their assigned areas. Food and supplies are delivered with minimal contact, and we need to prepare for the possibility that some of our own staff may become symptomatic and aggressive. The word aggressive hung in the air. Security weapons, Perez said. What are you authorized to use? We have standard issue sidearms, Randall said. 9mm pistols, Glock 17 models. We have a limited number of patrol rifles, 5.56 caliber, Arkansas, pattern, for extreme incidents. We do not deploy them inside the building unless lives are in immediate danger. But if someone becomes violent and poses a threat, we may have no choice. I thought of Ellis in the deck on bay, strapped to the stretcher, talking about the urge to break free and close the distance between himself and others. If his behavior worsened, he could become a danger even to the paramedics in full PPE. Before we reach that point, I said, we should try sedatives and physical restraints. But we need to remember something important. These people are not monsters. They are infected colleagues and community members. Our first duty is to contain and treat, not to escalate force. Agreed, Perez said. But we also cannot allow one person to compromise the safety of dozens. We all understood that line, even if we did not say the rest of it out loud. After the meeting, I headed for the BSL-4 prep area. The upper floor of the lab felt different even on ordinary days. The air was cooler, the lighting slightly dimmer, the doors thicker. There were more cameras, more badge readers, more posted procedures. In the prep room, I stepped out of my shoes and into dedicated facility clogs. I removed my outer clothing down to my scrubs, placed personal items into a locker, and passed through a metal detector. An overhead camera watched as I entered the suit room. Rows of positive pressure suits hung from ceiling racks, each one connected to an overhead rail. The suits were full body, with clear plastic helmets, heavy gloves, and boots integrated into the lower section. Each suit had a dedicated air hose connection point. When plugged in, filtered air would flow into the suit, keeping it slightly inflated and preventing contaminants from entering. I stepped into one of the suits, pulling my legs through the heavy material and guiding my arms into the sleeves. An attendant, already in gown and respirator, helped me align the helmet section. Once I was fully inside, I sealed the zipper that ran from the back of my knee, up across my back and over one shoulder. The attendant checked the seal, then connected the air hose. Filtered air rushed into the suit, inflating it slightly. The noise of the outside world dulled, replaced by the steady hiss inside my helmet. My own breathing sounded louder. I moved my fingers to test the gloves. They felt thick but responsive enough for fine work. In the adjacent booth, Halpin was already suited up. He gave me a thumbs up. Through the intercom, his voice came through slightly distorted. "You ready?" he asked. "As I will ever be," I replied. We entered the BSL-4 lab through a sequence of airlocks. Each door had to close properly before the next would open. The system verified pressure differentials and suit air supply before granting access. Inside, the lab looked like a cross between a chemistry classroom and a spaceship interior. Stainless steel benches, isolated equipment, and sealed biosafety cabinets sat under bright overhead lights. The floor was coated with an easy-to-clean surface sloped slightly toward drains. Every surface was designed to be decontaminated thoroughly. We moved first to the sample storage area. The viral constructs used in the reservoir panel were stored in ultra-low temperature freezers, secured under lock and key. We logged each sample we removed, linking it to a chain of custody record. We pulled both the original design and a set of samples from the batch used yesterday. "I want to run full sequencing on this," I said. "If something changed in the genome, we need to know as soon as possible." "We will have to prioritize," Halpern said. "We do not have infinite capacity. Start with the glycoprotein region and the replication control elements," I said. "If any recombination or mutation occurred, it is likely to show up there." We set up the samples in a biosafety cabinet using triple glove technique and slow, careful movements. Even though the virus was supposed to be non-replicating, we treated it as if it were fully capable of infecting us. We had believed in our design before. Now, that belief felt naive. As we worked, the intercom crackled. "Dr. Mercer," Perez's voice said, "we have a situation in the decom bay. You need to hear this." "Go ahead," I said, pausing. "Dr. Ellis has become more agitated," she said. "He broke one of the restraints. The paramedics attempted to re-secure him, but one of them sustained a bite on the forearm. He is currently conscious but in pain. They used a soft restraint on his upper body, and campus police are en route with more secure restraints." I closed my eyes for a second. It felt like we were watching an equation unfold in real time. One infection, then two, then four. If each case produced multiple new cases quickly, the growth would be explosive. "Is Ellis still in the bay?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "The internal door is locked. He is not leaving that room. But the paramedic who was bitten is in the adjacent corridor and he is frightened. We need guidance on how to handle him and how to decontaminate the area." "Keep him there," I said. "Do not let him walk around the building. Have him sit or lie down. 2 staff in full protective gear should stay with him, but no more. We treat the bite as a high-risk exposure, clean the wound thoroughly with copious soap and water, and an appropriate disinfectant. Document everything. Then, unless he refuses, move him to an isolation area in the hospital with full precautions. But warn them that his behavior may change rapidly based on what we have seen." "Understood," she said. "We will follow that." "And Perez," I added, "we may reach a point where leaving the building is more dangerous than staying inside. But for now, we need the hospital's capacity. Keep the transfers controlled and documented." "Yes," she said. "We are already close to that point." The line went silent. I turned back to the bench, my hands moving on autopilot as my mind raced ahead. The virus was not just causing random aggression. It was driving behavior that increased its own chances of spreading, seeking out people, closing distance, ignoring personal safety. It was doing what any efficient pathogen did, exploiting human habits. The question was how far it had already gone beyond our walls. By early afternoon, the first reports from outside the lab trickled in through official and unofficial channels. An internal group chat, usually used to coordinate social events and carpooling, had turned into an informal update feed. People shared messages from friends at the hospital, from campus police, from family members in the city. ER is overflowing. People acting confused and aggressive. Campus police closed one of the residence halls. Local news talking about a rapidly evolving situation near the university. I forced myself to focus on what we could control. In the sequencing core, our machines began processing the viral samples. It would take hours to get full data, but preliminary reads were already suggesting something alarming. Additional segments of genetic material that were not part of our original design. "Recombination," Halpern said quietly, pointing at a region on the screen. "It must have picked up sequences from the bat samples. We underestimated the homology. The added segments appear to affect the glycoprotein structure. That could increase receptor binding efficiency in human neural tissue, shortening incubation time and enhancing behavioral effects. It could also alter the tropism, expanding the range of cells it could infect. If this is accurate," I said, "we created a vector that can complete more than one replication cycle in vivo. That means it can spread between cells within a host and, based on what we are seeing, between hosts as well." "We did not intend this," he said. "Intent does not matter to the virus," I replied. "Only function does." As the day wore on, the atmosphere inside the lab changed. People who had started the morning worried about their experiments were now worried about whether they would make it home. Some staff pressed against the limits of lockdown, asking to leave to pick up children from school or check on elderly relatives. Perez held firm, explaining again and again that the best way to protect their families was to prevent further spread from the lab. Around 3 p.m, the first person inside our building showed clear signs of infection. Marisol called me from the BSL-3 corridor. "Daniel," she said, her voice tight. "It is Hal. Something is wrong with him." Hal was another lab tech, mid-20s, usually calm and organized. He had been in 3-12 with Marisol and Halpern monitoring the ferrets earlier, though at lower risk than the veterinary staff who handled the animals directly. "What happened?" I asked, already moving toward the stairwell. "He said he had a headache, like everyone else," she said. "We thought it was stress. Then he started pacing. He kept saying he needed to get out and find them. When I asked who, he could not answer. He tried to leave the corridor, even though we told him to stay put. He bumped into 2 people in the hall. It was not like him. His eyes look wrong." I reached the 3rd floor and badged through into the BSL-3 suite. The alarm tone sounded more insistent here, or maybe my nerves made it feel that way. In the main corridor, 2 security officers stood a short distance away from Hal, who leaned against the wall. He wore scrubs and a lab coat. Sweat soaked the collar. His eyes were wide, darting from one person to another. His breath came fast. "Hal," I said gently, approaching but keeping a safe distance. "It is Daniel. Talk to me. How do you feel?" He snapped his head toward me. For a second, I saw recognition. Then it flickered. "I have to go," he said. "I have to see my brother. He lives near the hospital. I have to check." "I know you want to," I said. "But right now, leaving this building could put him at risk. You do not want to do that." "I cannot just stand here," he said. He pushed off the wall and took a step forward. One of the officers shifted, gripping his radio. "Hal, stop," I said, holding up a hand. "You might be infected with the same thing as Dr. Ellis. We need to get you evaluated and somewhere safe." "I feel fine," he said, but his voice shook. "Just a headache, that is all." "And the sweating?" I asked. "The way your heart is pounding." He blinked rapidly. For a brief second, tears mixed with the sweat. "I do not want to hurt anyone," he whispered. "But when I look at you, I feel this pull, like I need to get closer. I do not like that feeling." "That means you are still you," I said. "You can recognize that something is wrong. That's good. We can work with that. I need you to step back into the room behind you. We have a chair there. You can sit while we figure out the next steps. Will you do that for me?" He hesitated. Then he nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. He turned and stepped toward the open doorway behind him. As he moved, one of the officers exhaled audibly in relief. I made a mental note. So far, calm verbal engagement was still working. But as the disease progressed, that might change. We got Hal into a small office, sat him down, and assigned a nurse and a security officer to stay with him in full PPE. We documented his exposure history and symptoms as thoroughly as we could. We drew blood for analysis, stored it in a secure container, and arranged for a controlled transfer to the sequencing lab. Hours blurred together. Each new report from outside the building painted a worse picture. The hospital implemented a full diversion, sending ambulances to facilities off the island. Campus police closed multiple roads. Residents were advised to stay indoors. Social media, always faster than official channels, carried shaky phone videos of people acting erratically in grocery stores and parking lots, lunging at others, being pulled away by friends and family. By early evening, we had enough initial sequence data from patient samples to confirm our fear. The virus inside Ellis and Hal matched our modified construct, with the recombinant segments from the bat reservoir. It was the same agent we had created upstairs, now acting outside our controlled environment. "This is ours," I said quietly, standing in front of the monitor. "This started here." "You did not design it to do this," Evelyn said. "None of us did." "Intention does not change responsibility," I said. "We started the chain. We have to help stop it, if that is even possible." Perez joined us, her face lined with exhaustion. It was past 7 p.m. None of us had eaten more than a few bites of protein bars or sips of coffee in hours. "CDC is sending a team," she said. "But with the roads closing and the situation in the city, they may not reach us quickly. We may be on our own for the next 12 to 24 hours. In that time, I said, this could spread through a large part of the island. Yes, she said. They are already discussing broader measures. But that is not our decision to make. We have to focus on what we can do within these walls. What is our priority? Evelyn asked. 2 things, Perez said. First, we must keep this facility from becoming an additional sort of spread. That means strict internal control, continuous monitoring of staff, and immediate isolation of anyone symptomatic. Second, we must generate as much actionable data as possible: viral kinetics, modes of transmission, environmental stability, and any potential vulnerabilities. If there is any chance of a treatment or countermeasure, it will come from this kind of work. That was the rational response. The scientist in me understood. The human in me thought of Ellis, lying strapped in the Deccan Bay. Hal, sitting in the office trying not to give in to the urge to move closer to people. The nurse in the apartment building, the bitten officer. They were more than data points. As the night settled over Galveston, our building remained lit. Security officers rotated in pairs along the corridors, checking on staff, watching for signs of agitation or confusion. Some people tried to sleep in offices or break rooms. Others kept working, driven by adrenaline and the vague comfort of having a task. Around 9:30 p.m., Randall called me to the deck on bay again. "Ellis is worse," he said over the radio. "You need to see this." I made my way down, every step feeling heavier. Outside the bay, in the small observation area, Perez stood with a nurse in full protective gear. They watched through a narrow window set into the door. Inside the bay, Ellis lay on the stretcher. He had broken 2 of the restraints. His right wrist and left ankle were loose. Additional nylon straps, the kind you saw in hospital restraints for high-risk patients, had been secured by campus police around his torso and remaining limbs, but he still managed to twist and buck against them. His skin was pale and sweaty. His eyes were open, but the clarity I had seen earlier was gone. Now they flicked from one point to another rapidly, tracking movement outside the glass. As we approached the window, his head snapped toward us. He jerked his body, as if trying to hurl himself off the stretcher and through the glass. The restraints held, but the metal frame screeched. "Daniel!" he shouted, his voice muffled by the layers of material between us. "Let me out. I need to get to them." "Who?" I asked softly, even though I knew he could not hear me through the barrier. He continued to struggle, repeating phrases with slight variations. "They are out there. I can hear them. I need to get out. Why are you keeping me here? Let me go. I need to go." His words overlapped, becoming a continuous stream. The content mattered less than the urgency in his tone. The paramedic who had been bitten was no longer in the adjacent corridor. They had moved him to the hospital earlier in the evening, under heavy precautions. We had not yet heard an update. "He broke a face shield with his teeth," Randall said quietly. "Bit right into it while one of the officers was trying to check his restraints. Did not break the skin, but cracked the plastic. That kind of force." "He is not entirely himself," Perez said. "But he is still human. We have to remember that." "Does he still respond to sedation?" I asked. "We gave him another dose about an hour ago," the nurse said. "It calmed him for a while, but he fought through it. We have to be careful not to suppress his breathing too much. We do not have the capacity to intubate in there safely." I watched Ellis for a while longer. His movements were repetitive and focused on escape and approach. He never looked inward. His attention was locked on points outside himself, tracking motion, seeking proximity. "This virus does not care what we think of ourselves," I said quietly. "It found a way to turn one of our most basic traits against us." "Which trait?" Perez asked. "Social orientation," I said. "We are drawn to other people. We look for them, seek their attention, move toward them. This thing amplifies that, removes the normal boundaries and caution. It turns us into vectors that cannot stop approaching others. even when we know we should. And if it gets beyond this island, Randall began, then trailed off. We all knew the answer. There were bridges, causeways, ferries. There were people who would leave before any full quarantine took hold. Some already had. As the night stretched, we divided the hours into tasks. We updated public health agencies, coordinated with the hospital, refined our internal screening protocols, and monitored every cough and complaint inside our walls. I spent time in the sequencing lab, in the command room, and occasionally in small side rooms where staff sat, trying to process what was happening. In one such room, I found Marisol sitting on a chair, staring at the floor. She held a cup of coffee in her hands, untouched. "You should try to sleep," I said, closing the door behind me. She shook her head. "Every time I close my eyes, I see that ferret working the latch," she said. "It kept pushing in the same place over and over. We thought it was just clever. Now I wonder if it was the same drive, just in a different species." "We do not know yet how cross-species behavior compares," I said. "But you are right to pay attention to those details. They may matter." She looked up at me, her eyes red. "We work here because we wanted to help," she said. "We wanted to understand viruses so we could stop them. But we made this one easier for itself, did we not? We put it in a backbone that can move efficiently through neural tissue, then gave it new tools from the reservoir. It is like we..." She stopped, catching herself. "We gave it more opportunities," I said. "We did. But we also built the tools that can analyze it now. Without this facility, we would be even more blind." "That is supposed to make me feel better," she asked. "No," I said. "It is just true." She managed a small, humorless smile. "What are the chances this stays a local event?" she asked quietly. "That we contain it here and it does not become something bigger?" I thought of the nurse's apartment, the hospital, the officer, the videos of people in grocery stores. I thought of Ellis's words in the ambulance, the way he described the urge to close distance. "I do not know," I said honestly. "We are past the point where I can predict that with any confidence." She nodded, accepting the answer, even if she hated it. "What are you going to do when you leave this building, if you ever get to?" she asked. The question caught me off guard. For a few seconds, I did not answer. "I do not know that either," I said finally. "Right now, I'm focused on the next hour, not the next week. But if we get through this, I suspect my job will be very different, and the world will be too." She took a slow breath and nodded. "You should get back to command," she said. "They need you there." "They need all of us," I replied. When dawn approached, the lights outside the building revealed a different city. Police vehicles blocked roads. A few fires burned in the distance, not yet widespread but enough to mark places where things had gotten out of hand. The hospital's emergency entrance was jammed with ambulances and private cars. Inside the lab, we had our first piece of potentially useful news. Our preliminary studies suggested that the virus, while highly effective in close human contact, was less stable in open air under certain conditions. It degraded faster in high temperatures and strong ultraviolet light. It also appeared to be sensitive to certain antiviral compounds that targeted its replication control elements. "It is not a cure," Evelyn said, looking at the data, "but it may be a starting point, something that slows it down." "If we can slow it down," I said, "we can buy time. Time for broader measures. Time for treatments. Time for people to adapt." That was the first moment in 24 hours that I felt something like hope. Not a dramatic surge, just a slight easing of the pressure in my chest. As I stand here now, in an empty office on the second floor, recording this account into a portable audio recorder, I do not know how the next day will unfold. I do not know how far the virus has already spread beyond our island, or whether the measures being taken elsewhere will hold. I do know this. It started here, in a research lab that was supposed to keep the most dangerous things in the world behind layers of steel, filters, and protocols. It started with a small tear in a glove, a minor incident report, a series of design decisions that made sense on paper but did not account for every possible recombination event in a bat's viral reservoir. From that tiny failure, the chain grew. A scientist with a headache, a nurse in an apartment building, a police officer on a call he thought would be routine, a tech pacing a hallway he had walked 100 times before without thinking. We created a virus that turned our need for connection into a weapon against us. It made us feel an intense pull toward one another at the very moment when our safety depended on staying apart. The reason I am recording this is not to assign blame. There will be enough of that. I am recording it because someone, somewhere, needs to understand how this looked from the inside. From the moment the first mouse stopped moving, to the ferrets working their latches, to the ambulance at our door, to the sirens in the distance as the city changed overnight. If you are listening to this, it probably means the world beyond these walls did not stay the same. Maybe you are in another lab, trying to understand the virus we helped bring into the open. Maybe you are a responder on the ground, trying to protect a community that does not fully grasp what is happening yet. Maybe you are just someone who survived, sorting through the fragments of how it began. I did not set out to be the person who watched the first day of a new kind of epidemic unfold from the inside, but that is what happened. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.